Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Faces of RfR. I'm Eric Wells, and I am very, very excited to be sitting down with another face of recovering from religion, Eric Finnegan. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Two Erics today, so
Yeah, at least we won't be saying one another's name. Like this is it. Like
yeah,
Erics are
right.
gone now. It's just individuals.
Yeah, I'm doing good though. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing really good. Super excited about how quickly and how much the support group side of recovering from religion is expanding, and you are a part of that.
Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it. It's a great organization.
Yeah. So tell us what do you volunteer for with RFR?
So I do a couple things with RfR. I started out doing calls and chats with RfR, but as I got more and more interested in RfR, I realized that I kind of wanted to go a different path. So I also do some tabling with them. Right now, we can't do that because the quarantine.
Yeah.
But that's something that I find to be really important because I find atheist activism to be lacking in the public sector. I think it's really important for people to know that there's resources out there. And so our mission in that side of things is to try to get out to kind of diverse like festivals and events and just talk about RfR with the people. And then also the support group, which I find maybe even more gratifying because the mission there is to, help people that are struggling with maybe questions or, just needing someone to talk to after leaving religion. And so as someone who came from religion, I didn't really have a support group. So this has just been a really great experience to give someone something I didn't have during that period of time.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt too. Kind of coming out and realizing I was an atheist in a very conservative area of Springfield, Missouri, but you are filling the role as the support group leader in Spokane, Washington, and it's a brand new group, about a month and a half or so old, and got to have our first meeting. That was pretty cool. What did you think of that?
I thought it was really good. It was interesting because it was our first meeting and we didn't have much of a turnout locally. And that's partially due to the fact that we did it online, I think, and, everybody's quarantined. So it's an interesting time. I think that a lot of people are just starting to like figure out this whole online meetup thing, but it was really good. It was interesting talking to the people that were there though, because I found just even with the people that were there who are a part of the support group leadership, even their stories are just heartbreaking,
Yeah.
and so even the people that have made it through and feel confident, their stories are just as harsh and needed help as well. Maybe not in that moment, but it's interesting. So
Now you kind of mentioned that you were a part of a religious organization. Where did you? What's your story? Where did you get into, and how did you come out of it?
so I grew up in a small town in northern Idaho called Coeur d'Alene, and I kind of bounced around when I was a kid, but through bouncing around, I went to a few Christian schools growing up. And so I grew up like fundamentalist Christian. My parents weren't super extreme, but I was surrounded with super extreme views. And because I went to school and stuff, that was my education. So,
Oh,
I,
you went to a private school, like a religious.
yeah, I went to a fundamentalist Christian school,
Wow. Wow.
6,000-year-old earth. I didn't learn about evolution until I left school. And I thought the earth was I thought this earth was 6,000 years old until I dropped out of school because I just was like, the veil had been lifted, a little bit. So, yeah.
So you left school because you couldn't really swallow what they were teaching you any longer, or
So it's hard. it's kind of hard to explain. Like I left a Christian school because I became an atheist and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Then I went to public school and I was so far behind
Oh,
in
yeah.
my class. Like I didn't know, I would have had to probably go back to a really, really earlier grade, and I just wasn't willing to do that. So I dropped out and got my GED. So yeah, that's, when I was 16 when I became an atheist, and it was because I had been in Bible class, and I've read the Bible front to back probably 1.5 or 2 times. And so I was in Bible class, and the Bible teacher was trying to explain to me Noah's flood, and I just could not wrap my head around it. And you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not a kid anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the story doesn't add up. Literally, mathematically, it doesn't add up. But even if it was like some kind of allegory, it doesn't add up. And so I was trying to comprehend how, if evolution isn't real, and there's billions of land species, like how is that possible on a boat? And after a while, I've always been kind of a questioning person. I just annoyed the teachers to the point where they wouldn't want me in their class,
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so I had to seek alternative routes, and I started finding stuff on the internet, like Richard Dawkins' book, and I ordered The God Delusion, and that was game over for me. But
Yeah. Noah's flood, it got me too. It was the same story got me. Like I took a lot for granted of what they said, but my youth pastor told us that it before Noah's flood, it never rained on the earth, and I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, there was this big bubble of water, and it broke, and that's where all the water came from. And I'm like, what? That makes absolutely no sense. So I think I didn't get out until I was 16, and he said that around like the time I was 12 or 13, but it kind of stuck with me. Like, this is not at all making any sense, because we would definitely see some evidence of like some sort of firmament or whatever, some sort of plastic bubble up there that all the water was held in, and to not rain ever,
yeah,
like
yeah, it's really interesting. Like I bounced around a lot when I was a kid, and I was exposed to a lot of stuff. Like my parents, like I said, they weren't super crazy with it. And my uh my mom my mom was very accepting of like gay people
hmm,
and stuff like that. So there was already a little bit of contradiction just in my own household.
sure.
And I I think that for me was actually the biggest thing, was that I knew my mom had a lot of gay friends, and like I would meet them, and then I would go to these schools and see how they treated homosexuals and things like that. And that was really hard for me to swallow. Like I just couldn't, it just did not equate for me. I didn't see that at all. So, um, that was a big thing for me. And then obviously like the science didn't make sense, but it was weird when you're in religion. And I don't know if this is how it was for you, but when I was in religion, I would always have a voice in the back of my head that was talking to God. Like I would
Yeah.
always like, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh, I found my keys. Thanks God. You look up and you're like, thanks God, or whatever. And it's just, even at the moments of my like quote unquote doubt, until I realized there was no God, uh, even in my like moments of doubt, I still prayed. I still felt like there was a God
Hmm.
above me or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so it never really left, like the religion never really left until I read The God Delusion. And at that point, I, I, it just didn't make sense. Like
Sure.
it was weird. It was like seeing through, it's like what, Plato's allegory, like once you see it out of the shadows and you see what's really going on, you can't really put it back in the box.
Yep.
And that's how it was for me. So
it's kind of goes to the fact that, or the understanding that you can't change your beliefs. Like, I cannot all of a sudden believe in a Jesus now. I can't put that back into Pandora's box or anything like that. It's not a choice any longer. It's just, it doesn't make any sense, and I cannot go back and believe it unless there is some extremely compelling evidence, which I've not seen any of.
Yeah. It's really interesting when you meet, like I have, Christian. Because I went to school with a bunch of Christian people. I have friends that became pastors, and I have friends that are probably atheists, but they won't admit it to themselves. And then I've got friends that are like super Christian, and so there's like this huge mixture of people that left school and became whatever they became in life. And I've had a lot of people try to bring me back. Right. And I'm like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, it's not it's not that it's not possible, but it's pretty much as close to that as, like you said, it would have to be overwhelming evidence. And for me, it would be like them saying, like, Eric, just believe in ghosts or something, like, I can't just do that. It doesn't make sense. And
it's like, or like the Keebler elves died for your sins or something. Just
yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's interesting. And so once again, I don't know how this was for you, but when I left the religion, I was pretty angry. I felt a little deceived, not only by my like immediate family, who I thought they were messing with me. I thought there was no way they could believe this. I just I didn't understand how it was possible that they believed it. But I also felt like maybe I was being deceived by everybody or something. I had this whole experience growing up of believing something that wasn't true.
Right.
And that's an interesting thing to come out of.
Yeah, I felt lied to, and I was angry about it, but there was nobody to blame. I couldn't blame anybody. They were just doing what they were told, and back and all to eons. I was really angry and felt really lied to. Could totally relate to that. Yeah.
So I was really angry for a while, and then I started to have a little bit more compassion, I guess, for the people that are in that. And I mean, I can be a little like rude sometimes still to, especially to people that I know really well, like my parents. I'm just like, come on, guys, but it made me start to realize that, it's like we said earlier, you don't choose your beliefs. Yeah. It's something that you're either brought up believing, or you have an experience that you just don't scientifically understand. And it's really important for there to be people that are willing to engage in a non-threatening way, non-demeaning way. And that took a long time to understand. But as I got to my like early mid 20s, I started to realize that that's how I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to have conversations with people and not have it be an emotional conversation that's like emotionally charged, just be able to talk about it. So yeah, it's interesting. I found RfR in kind of in a weird way, because I had this idea like, oh my gosh, what if I made a phone call line where people could just call me and just like ask me questions about like science or something from a religious standpoint. And then I just tell my wife about it, and then we came across it online together, RfR, and I was like, oh, there's something like that, And so I always come up with the invention after it's already been invented. Yeah,
you're like 10 years too late.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
I've got this incredible, if I put this tungsten wire inside of a vacuum, it makes light. What?
Exactly. Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
That was a pretty unique way to come about hearing about RfR. When you do volunteer, we talked a little bit about what do you get out of it when you're volunteering for RfR?
That is a pretty big question. I think it's kind of hard to answer because it might not be so pointed, there's been a lot that I've gotten already. And I mean, I haven't been with the organization for a super long time. But the one thing I really got was a sense of like appreciation for other people, because there's so many people that are just trying to help other people for just that reason. They just want to help. And seeing that with this organization, just so many awesome people that have come together. And, I feel like I've met like a family almost. I really do. It's really awesome. Everybody's just so cool and so smart and so fun to talk to.
We all have got like the same goal. We're all kind of on the same page, I don't know about you, but I've experienced no bickering or there's been disagreements, but we handle it so incredibly well because we're all out for the goal of helping other people and not necessarily being not necessarily a claim or something like that for ourselves.
Right. Exactly. I also think that it's cool to be around people who they know what it's like to be so convinced of something and then be wrong. You know what I mean? That's what religion is.
Man, yeah.
That's what religion is, because once you go through that experience once or twice or maybe 3 times in my case, like I've done that, like I've done other things where I was like adamant, this is how it is, and then I've been super wrong. So once you go through that experience, it's a lot easier to bounce through ideas and try to break things down. And
it's a lot easier to be sure, to investigate and that your claim and be sure that you're right or something. But I loved how you put that. It just, even the timing of it was just like, it's perfect.
Yeah. It's interesting. Another thing that I've really gotten out of RfR is like, it's like an antidepressant for me.
Oh yeah.
And that's the truth, because I personally, I feel like there's a lot of things in the world that I would love to see changed. I think religion is at the core of a lot of those things. Yeah. And so if you're able to help people, like for the listeners, our goal is never to try to force a belief on someone that's already been done to them. So our goal is to try to help people reason better, right? Our goal is, and be there if they need to talk, but our goal is to just help them investigate their ideas and beliefs and then, work through that on their own. And so it's really good to be able to find people that want help investigating those beliefs and then try to maybe help them work their way through it, bounce ideas, be able to ask threatening questions and see what they think of that. And then maybe they hang up and come back later, or they leave the meeting and then come back next week and they had time to really think about it and work through it. The more that people do that in general, the better the world is, because I think that it is able to bring a little bit of empathy to, them. They can like learn empathy a little bit. And so, yeah.
I love it. So what, I guess we kind of answered this, like what would keep you going? What keeps you going? And you kind of talked about that already.
With RfR or just in general?
Just RfR. What keeps you going with RfR?
Yeah. Well, I think what really keeps me going is the idea that this could potentially change the world by, a lot of people don't feel like they can make an impact on the world.
Yep.
And so a lot of people just throw their hands up and they're like, it's already in motion.
Yeah.
But every time that you tweak one little part of the world, it impacts it. So, if you're able to help someone just maybe be happier, maybe they were struggling with family and they don't have anybody to talk to, they can't talk to their family, but they can talk to you, and then they can bring that happiness to the world, and that makes the world a better place. So
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I've been before stepping into this position, I was a support group leader for 5 years in Springfield, Missouri, and those 5 years, having meetings once or twice a month, you get to see people, you get to know people, you get to see them when they first walk through the door, and then see them, 10 meetings, 20 meetings later, and they are better people because of it. They come in a nervous wreck, they come in full of doubt and confusion and pain, and then over the course of X number of meetings, where we're all just kind of supporting one another and lending an empathetic ear, they are all the more stronger for it. They are all the more secure for it. And life is better for them. They see life brighter than they did when they walked through the door. And I completely agree with you on that. And it's something that keeps me going too. Like, I could have walked away and have been happy with the impact that was made by the work, but I love it. It keeps me coming back for more. Like, I can do more good. I can help more people.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's a lot of people that are hurting in the world, and a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that right now we live in such a polarizing time, and maybe it was always this polarized, I don't know, but it seems like it's a lot more polarized than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so, like, I have a friend who is kind of a conspiracy theorist, and he's pretty aggressive about it, I guess. And so him and I have had a few discussions on the conspiracy theories and things like that. And, I never try to be a dick to him or anything, or I don't know if I should say that, but never try to be rude. I never try to be rude to him or anything. I try to use the same kind of strategy as we do with RfR, which is just ask questions, try to understand, and then work through things. And, he emailed me last week and he said, I'm just really struggling right now with everything that's going on because I am lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of people feel, and for a lot of people, religion is able to bring a sense of community to people and things like that. And so, when people make the decision, like, they can't choose their beliefs. So when they start to realize that they don't believe this anymore, and then they don't know what to do because they don't have community anymore, and they don't know who to talk to and who to turn to. So RfR might be one of the most important organizations in the country, so.
If not, that's not the top 10, the most important.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you were coming out of religion, what was one of the hardest things you've had to overcome, or one of the toughest struggles that you've dealt with between coming out of religion and where you are now?
So my answer might be, I don't know if it's gonna be surprising or not. I think it'll be surprising, but when I left religion, it wasn't difficult for me to accept the fact that there wasn't a God. That wasn't hard. It didn't, like I was saying, that I used to just think about praying and, you just always pray and things like that. That was done.
It sounds like you didn't feel alone because you had your buddy Jesus with you. Right.
So when I became an atheist, I turned that switch off. I didn't pray anymore. It was kind of weird. Like, I just totally was okay with it. I wasn't afraid to tell anybody. I was very vocal to my parents, my family, all my friends. They all knew it, like, right away. So that wasn't difficult. and that's what I think it is difficult for a lot of people. I think now looking back on it, the thing that was most difficult was losing resentment and working through how I treated other people that were religious. That was the most difficult thing for sure for me.
So sort of dealing with the anger of being lied to, or
I think that it was more like I just couldn't understand how someone could believe this.
okay.
And that used to make me really frustrated because it just seemed so obvious or something to me. And that's a really harsh way of looking at it, in my opinion.
So
And
almost like the folks who did believe were suckers.
yeah,
Type
you
of
know,
thing.
like I just couldn't, I couldn't look at them with respect, which
Sure.
is really honest.
Yeah.
And but it's just the truth. Like, and working through that and like trying to lose that resentment, and you know, and like starting to, this is just within the last like maybe 5 years where I've really started to be like, okay, you know, there's a reason for this. It's biological, and you know, and trying to work through loving people for who they are, and then if they don't ever want to talk about religion or whatever, just like still be okay with it, and not like proselytize atheism, basically.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that was really hard for me, but that's something that I'm, you know, like I really am glad that I was able to work through, because it's given me the opportunity to be like kind, caring, loving, all the things that Jesus would have wanted or whatever. and and
what would Eric do? That's
yeah, exactly. So it gives you the opportunity to be the kind of to be a voice for atheism in a way that is genuine and kind-hearted, and hopefully that's how people see it. And then being able to, you know, people can see it and see that we're not like these, you know, bloodthirsty heathens or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how would you describe your current beliefs? I know you mentioned atheist at the, you know, when you kind of came out. Where do you kind of stand now?
I'm pretty strong atheist. You know, so I know that in the atheist community, a lot of people try to hold out, you know, that last little bit just for good measure and things like that. I have a pretty good understanding of physics and biology, and I just don't think that those two things can be rationalized together. So as far as a deistic God goes, maybe, you know, like I'll hold that out for like 2 or 3% or something. But any other like God of the Bible or Islam or Judaism or anything like that is pretty much out of the picture for me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people find that materialism, or philosophical materialism as it's called, or naturalism.
Naturalism.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to see that as a like a dry, empty way of looking at the world.
Yeah.
I totally disagree. I mean, when I look at the universe and can like look at just light, just the interaction of light, you know, like how electromagnetism works and how like amazing that is, like the physics of the universe, when you look at that and can just kind of scratch the surface of understanding, it is the most it's way crazier than a god. I mean, the whole like concept behind physics is nuts, and it's beautiful and it's profound, and you can look out in the world and see this crazy experience that's life, and you get something huge out of it. You know, it's like, it's really beautiful. And I think that being able to be okay that the complexity of life happened by whatever accident that happened. Wow, we are lucky, we are so lucky. And we should be able to take the time to look out in the world and really appreciate and like be here now instead of looking into the future and hoping for something that might not ever come.
Yeah, yeah. When I couldn't agree with you more. When I became an atheist, I've always had a sense of wonder, and I've always loved science. But when I realized I was an atheist, and I realized this is all we have, there's nothing beyond it. There's no supernatural, et cetera, et cetera. My sense of wonder was just magnified even more, and I love it. I love this sense of wonder and awe, and it's the closest thing I feel like I could get to being quote unquote spiritual, because this sense of awe, this plugged into an incredibly complex machine and partially being able to understand it a little bit is amazing. Last night, my wife and I were down south in Colorado Springs, and she said, "Oh, look, there's a blinking light over there on the mountains." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a helicopter pad, and it's a rotating light." And she's like, "What?" "Yeah, just you only see it when the light's facing you." I'm like, "Oh." So she got that, and I said, "That's exactly what a quasar is, a pulsar is out in," and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yes." No, it's just I got to experience that sense of wonder through her, and it just is fantastic experience.
Yeah, I live in North Idaho, as I mentioned before, and we live in like the mountains kind of.
Yeah.
And on a clear night, it is crazy what you can see up here. I mean, the amount of stars is just totally mind-boggling. And I actually have an observatory, like a little space observatory. It's actually not little, it's very big.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so I have a space observatory, and I mean, when you like look up there, if you're not losing your breath a little bit, you're not doing it right.
I know. I remember when I was shown my first binary star. I'm like, what? Those two things are spinning around each other? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, and they're how far away? Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's like every time that I mean, just I don't know if you saw this the other day in the headlines, but there was a big black hole that swallowed a little black hole, and they felt it in the LIGO, yeah. So and when you see stuff like that, that is like seeing God, I mean, it really is. It's like it's so exciting, and they got a picture of a black hole, and this is all stuff that I mean was theorized less than 100 years ago. They
thought that we would never be able to experimentally validate this.
Totally. And
when they flipped on those LIGO telescopes and within a week just had their first test, they're like, "No way, this is not possible." It was so incredibly exciting. We have only been able to view the universe through like the electromagnetic spectrum. That's it. That is all we've been able to do until we turned on LIGO, and it's completely different way. I was so excited. Every time a new thing comes out from LIGO, I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing."
I know. And then now soon they're going to be launching up the new telescope, the James Webb telescope, which is just like, I mean, they were supposed to do that last year. Hopefully they do it, because this is another huge adventure in science. And I think that this is one of those things, like the fact, I mean, where we are right now in physics and in science, our understanding is so crazy to comprehend. I mean, the fact that, just mathematics, the fact that we understand mathematics and like came up with a way to measure things is crazy in itself. But this experience is so cool and exciting, and every day we're learning so much, and we as an individual can, if you want to learn something, like you'll never run out of things to learn as an individual. So that excitement of just like an it's like a fountain of information that you can never stop tapping,
Right. Right.
and so that excitement and understanding really is what makes me want to help people with the struggle of coming out of religion, because I think that a lot of times people are like, well, what do you live for? And it's like,
Yeah.
this, I mean, look
Yeah.
at all of this. We live for this. It's, it's so exciting. And if we could help people find that wonder, maybe there would be less war and less fighting, and more people trying to go after understanding and trying to achieve more scientific things. Instead of spending 40% of the budget on military stuff, we could be spending 40% on space. I mean, holy smokes.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah, we would be spending more time sharing and exploring and discovering, and less time fighting over resources.
Yeah.
It was more time solving problems. Yeah, but we could go on talking
Yeah.
about science. I kind of get that.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite topics and stuff. And I think that would make this interview like 3 hours long.
Maybe 3 days.
Yeah. No, it's so amazing out there. What do you? I'm going to switch tracks a little bit. What do you like to do? And like, tell me a little bit about you. What do you like to do in your free time? What do you like doing for a living and stuff like that?
Yeah, so for a living, I build custom cabinets and furniture. It's pretty awesome. I never thought I was going to do that for a living, but I do. And
You have your own cabinet shop and everything with like the planer and the
yeah, so it's me and one other guy, and it's not a huge shop, but it's like, we do really high-end custom stuff, and uh it's like fun cabinets. It's not like out of the box,
right.
like we do everything from rough lumber, so it's a lot of fun and artistic, I guess. So it keeps me interested in work. At least I can do something that I enjoy doing for work. But outside of that, I
Sounds like you
really,
need to explore your creative side
yeah,
doing this kind of work. It's not rote. It's a lot of problem solving and stuff like that. Is that right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, like Paul, he's kind of my mentor, and he is just amazing. He literally, uh, I don't know, like the stuff that he does to me is way more incredible than what I do. I build everything and finish everything, but he does all the design. So he can like go into a house and then pull a bunch of measurements, and then somehow at the end of the job everything fits. And that that to me is amazing. I know it doesn't sound like it should, but that is amazing. So
Yeah, because you're not like building in a 12-foot long unit. You're building individual pieces, and they all have to add up to fit into that space.
Yeah. And things change, and it's
Yeah.
not like, it's not like everything is like, okay, we need one 3-foot cabinet, a 6-foot cabinet. It's like, we need one that's like 3 foot 6, 5/16, and then this one needs to be, so it's like really down to the hair, and you're filling spaces. So if it's like an 1/8 inch short, then it doesn't fit because now there's a gap on the wall. So to me, that's what's amazing, is he's able to just go in there and pull all these measurements and like get everything to fit perfect. Like, I don't know. I think it's incredible. So, so that's my day job. But then outside of that, I'm an outdoor enthusiast. As you can probably imagine, I really like to see nature, space.
You live in the Idaho mountains. You better get out there and enjoy it, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'll go backpacking, and I'll hike in somewhere like 20 miles or something, and to the top of a mountain, and then you just get there and you look out and you're like, I could literally explore like this patch of land for the rest of my life and not even touch it. There's so much land out there to explore. So there's that. And then I love to read. Reading is a big passion of mine as well. So
What is one of the books that you really enjoyed reading that kind of surprised you that you enjoyed it as much as you did?
Oh, one that totally surprised me was Karl Marx. I'm serious. When I went into reading Marx, I thought I did it because I had a friend that challenged me to do it because he thought that I was kind of speaking ignorantly about something I didn't know anything about, and I totally was. And then I read it and I was like, wow, this guy was way ahead of his time and super intelligent. But also Foucault. I don't know if you've ever read Foucault.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he's a philosopher, and he wrote a book called Discipline and Punish, and it's just about the history of prisons, and
Oh wow, that sounds really fascinating.
it is amazing. I
Yeah.
can't recommend that enough. And then I think I told you about this one, but Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you were telling me how it felt like poetry, how he was writing it.
Yes.
But it still had some really deep concepts in it.
Yeah, he's a physicist from Italy, and he wrote this book, and I was expecting a physics book, and not, I mean, I was fine with that, but the way that he wrote it was so poetic. I literally cried. I cried reading this book. I'm not kidding. I'm not ashamed.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so that one was probably actually one of the most memorable books. Like I have a feeling, I've read it more than once. And then Sam Harris Waking Up. So I guess I'll stop because I can go on. Yeah,
That's another 3-day discussion when we start going on.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've got one last question. So if you could travel back in time and talk to your past self, who would you talk to and what would you talk about?
That is so. Do I pick the age or?
Yeah, you could have talk to yourself yesterday or talk to yourself when you were 5.
Okay. That is a really tough question.
I mean, it might be a stupid question too. I don't know.
No, it's not a stupid question. It's not a stupid. It's a really good question, but it's a really hard question because it's like one of those things where I don't want to mess up the direction of my life. But honestly, I think that if I could go back and tell myself to do anything, I would have told myself when I was 16 and I dropped out of high school to pursue college. That's something that I'm doing now, and it's a little bit late. It's not too late, but it's like I would have loved to have gone when I was younger and been able to get a degree in something I'm passionate about. So,
do you feel like you would have been ready to go to college, at that point? Because I mean, I'm talking for myself. Like,
sure.
I got out of high school, graduated high school, then tried to take 3 semesters in community college, and I just couldn't hack it. I mean, I just wasn't ready for it. I just didn't take it seriously like I should have. And now that I'm older, I've got some more life experience, and I am more prepared to take some college courses. But my 18-year-old self wasn't ready at all.
You're probably right. My 18-year-old self definitely wouldn't have been. So maybe I would have told myself 4 years ago to go because I think I would have been ready 4 years ago, but I kept on putting it off because I was just like, you're too old. What's the point? And so at least I'd be done now, and it's kind of funny. I still had that mindset up until 6 months ago, maybe. And then I had someone on my podcast who's like a philosopher and an instructor, and he was like, dude, you should definitely go. And I was like, damn it, okay, I'll go. So, yeah.
So you've got a podcast. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so I've got a podcast called Mind Melt Podcast, and we just talk about everything like science, philosophy, mostly. I've had some pretty cool guests on there, and it's just kind of a passion thing for me. Like I love to pick people's brains on stuff, especially when they're You know, especially when I can barely understand what they're saying. They're so smart, you know. So yeah, it's a fun little project, and if you want to check it out, it's just Mind Melt Podcast. So.
And where else could people, if people wanted to follow you on social media, where else could they find you?
You can follow, I guess, my Facebook page. It's called Mind Melt Podcast on Facebook. And then I guess any social media, I have that as the tag. So
Awesome. Eric, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to sit down with me, and it's been great getting to know you. I love talking with folks like yourself, and kind of see what makes you you and what makes you tick, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course. I enjoy our conversation every time we talk, Eric. You're one of the good ones.
I don't know about that. Well, thank you, sir. Well, if you are in the Spokane area of Washington, there is a meetup group for you led by this handsome gentleman here, and he does a fantastic job. Take it from me because I've watched him do it. But look for the meetup group at Spokane, Washington area, and otherwise you can find Eric around on the interwebs. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see ya.